The fluorescent lights of Marcello's Italian bistro made everything look slightly unreal, like the whole restaurant existed underwater. I'd worked here for 18 months, long enough to know which tables tipped well, which customers wanted conversation, and which ones preferred to be invisible while they ate their pasta and drank their wine. I preferred invisible. My name is Sofia Reyes, 23 years old, and I'm very good at being invisible. It's a survival skill I've perfected over the past year and a half, ever since I realized that being noticed by the wrong person could leave marks that concealer couldn't quite cover. Tuesday nights were usually slow. The dinner rush had ended around 8, and now at 9:30, only a handful of tables remained occupied. I moved between them with practiced efficiency, refilling water glasses, clearing plates, smiling that professional smile that said I'm here to serve you without actually inviting anything more. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The kitchen smelled like garlic and basil, familiar and comforting in a way that made me think of my grandmother's house before she died. Before everything fell apart. Before I met Marcus. Table 6 needs their check, Angela called from behind the bar. She was my age, but she seemed younger somehow, untouched by the kind of heaviness that made my shoulders ache even when I wasn't carrying anything. I grabbed the leather folder, calculated the total in my head they'd ordered, the seafood risotto, and 2 glasses of the house Chianti, and headed toward their table. My black flats made almost no sound on the polished wood floor. Another skill. Moving quietly, taking up as little space as possible. The couple at table 6 barely looked at me as I set down their check. They were too busy leaning into each other, whispering, things that made them smile in that private way couples have when they still like each other. I felt a pang of something not quite jealousy, more like grief for a version of myself who'd once believed in that kind of easy affection. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I didn't need to check it. Marcus had been calling and texting for 3 days straight, ever since I'd finally changed the locks on my apartment. 47 calls yesterday alone, 23 so far today. The restraining order I'd filed last week didn't seem to matter much to him. "You okay?" Angela asked when I returned to the bar. Her dark eyes studied my face with the kind of concern that made me want to lie convincingly. "Fine. Just tired." "That's what you always say." She wiped down the bar with sharp, efficient movements. "And you're always lying." I managed a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "I'm fine, Ung. Really." She didn't believe me. I didn't expect her to. The front door opened, bringing in a gust of October wind that smelled like coming rain and exhaust fumes. I glanced up automatically, waitress instinct, always aware of new customers, and felt my stomach drop. Marcus stood in the doorway. He was supposed to be 100 yards away. That's what the restraining order said. 100 yards at all times. But here he was, dressed in the gray jacket I'd always hated, his dirty blonde hair falling across his forehead the way it used to before I learned that charm and danger could wear the same face. His eyes found mine across the restaurant, and I watched his expression shift from determined to something harder, something that made my throat tight. "Sofia." He said my name loud enough that the couple at table 6 looked up, loud enough that Angela froze mid-wipe, loud enough that I knew this wasn't going to end quietly. I took a step backward, my body making decisions before my brain caught up. "Marcus, you need to leave. There's a restraining order." "I know about the restraining order." He moved deeper into the restaurant, past the hostess stand where Emma stood, with her phone already in her hand, probably calling the police. "I know about a lot of things, Sofia. Like how you've been ignoring my calls. How you changed the locks without even talking to me first." "We talked," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to sound calm even though my heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. "We talked for 2 years. I'm done talking. You don't get to be done." He was closer now, weaving between tables with the single-minded focus of someone who'd been drinking just enough to be reckless. 2 years, Sofia. 2 years I took care of you. Put a roof over your head, and this is how you repay me?" The restaurant had gone quiet. That awful, heavy silence that happens when everyone knows they're witnessing something they shouldn't be, but nobody knows how to stop it. "Sir." Our manager, Robert, appeared from the kitchen. He was 50-something, thin in a way that suggested he'd been thicker once, and he moved with the cautious energy of someone who'd broken up bar fights but really didn't want to. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave, or we'll call the police." "Call them." Marcus didn't even look at Robert. His attention was fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I'm not doing anything illegal. Just trying to talk to my girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend, I corrected, hating how small my voice sounded. And you're violating a restraining order just by being here. Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, yes, but underneath it, something that looked almost like hurt. That was the thing about Marcus. He genuinely believed he was the victim in our story. That I was the unreasonable one for not wanting to be grabbed, for flinching at raised voices, for finally understanding that love wasn't supposed to leave bruises. I just want 5 minutes, he said, and his voice had gone soft now, pleading. This was the Marcus who'd apologized after every fight, who'd brought me flowers after every time his hands got too rough, who'd convinced me for 18 months that maybe I was overreacting, maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe if I just tried harder to not upset him, everything would be fine. No. The word came out stronger than I expected. No more minutes, no more chances. It's over, Marcus. His face changed. The softness evaporated, replaced by something cold and hard that I recognized too well. This was the moment I knew from experience right before the switch flipped. Right before nice Marcus disappeared and the other one took his place. Get away from her. The voice came from behind me, low and accented in a way that made me think of old movies about Sicily and blood feuds, and men who spoke softly because they didn't need to shout to be heard. I turned. The man who'd spoken sat at the bar, 3 stools down from where Angela stood, frozen with her cloth. I'd noticed him. Earlier, hard not to. Really. He was maybe 35, wearing a black suit that fit the way expensive suits do, like it had been made specifically for his shoulders. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and strong lines. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, white against olive skin. But it was his eyes that caught me, dark brown, almost black in the dim restaurant lighting, and focused on Marcus with the kind of attention that made the temperature in the room seem to drop 10 degrees. This doesn't concern you, Marcus said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. He'd sensed something I was just beginning to understand. This man at the bar wasn't someone you challenged lightly. You're in my restaurant, threatening a woman who's told you to leave. The man stood, and I realized he was tall, well over 6 feet, moving with controlled grace that suggested violence wouldn't surprise him. That concerns me. Your restaurant? Marcus laughed, but it sounded hollow. Who the hell are you? Dante Caruso. He said it like everyone should know the name, and from the way Robert's face went pale, the way Angela's eyes widened slightly, maybe everyone did. Everyone except me. I don't care if you're the Pope, Marcus said. But he was backing up now, some animal instinct telling him to retreat even as his pride kept him talking. Sofia, we're not done with this conversation. Yes, Dante said quietly. You are. 2 other men had materialized from somewhere I hadn't seen them before, but now they flanked Dante, both wearing similar dark suits, both watching Marcus with the focused attention of people who knew exactly how to remove a problem. Marcus looked at me one more time. His expression held promises. This isn't over. We'll talk about this later. You'll regret this. Before he finally turned and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded too quiet for how much tension it released from the room. I realized I was shaking. My hands, my legs, everything trembling like I'd been holding up a building and someone had finally told me I could put it down. Are you hurt? Dante's voice had gentled, addressing me directly now instead of Marcus's retreating back. No, My voice cracked. I'm fine. Thank you. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. He studied me with an intensity that should have felt invasive but somehow didn't. How long has he been harassing you? It's not, I started to say. It wasn't harassment. Wasn't that serious? All the minimizing phrases I'd trained myself to use. Then I stopped. 3 days since I filed the restraining order. 18 months before that. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Not pity, I would have hated pity, but recognition. Like he'd seen this before. Understood the weight of what I wasn't saying. Robert. He turned to my manager, who'd been standing frozen by the kitchen door. Sofia's shift is over. Pay her for the full evening. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Of course, Mr. Caruso, of course. I should have argued, should have insisted I could finish my shift, that I needed the money, that I was fine. Instead, I heard myself say, I need to get my bag from the back. The staff room was tiny. Just enough space for lockers and a small table where we ate our rushed meals between shifts. I leaned against my locker, forehead pressed to the cool metal, and tried to slow my breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth, like my grandmother had taught me when I was 8 and afraid of thunderstorms. This wasn't a thunderstorm. This was Marcus, and restraining orders apparently didn't mean anything, and I had no idea what I was going to do when he showed up at my apartment later. Because he would show up. He always did. When I came back out, Dante was waiting by the bar. Angela had disappeared, probably to give us privacy, though I suspected she was listening from the kitchen. "I'll drive you home," Dante said. Not a question, a statement of fact. "That's really not necessary. I can take the bus. It's 1.5 miles to the nearest bus stop. It's October in Chicago, and your ex-boyfriend is likely waiting outside to follow you." His dark eyes held mine. "I'm driving you home." He was right about all of it. The bus stop was far, the weather was turning, and Marcus was absolutely waiting somewhere nearby. I nodded, too tired to argue anymore. The car, black, expensive, probably German, sat in the restaurant's small parking lot. One of Dante's men opened the back door, and I slid into leather seats that probably cost more than my entire month's rent. Dante settled beside me, and his driver pulled smoothly into traffic without being told where to go. "How did you know my address?" I asked, then immediately felt stupid. Of course he knew. Men like Dante Caruso, men who owned restaurants and had people materialize from nowhere to handle problems, always knew things. "I make it my business to know about situations that might become complicated." He kept his gaze forward, watching Chicago slide past the tinted windows. "Your manager filed a police report last week when your ex-boyfriend showed up drunk during dinner service. I saw the report." "Why would you see a police report about—" I stopped, understanding, clicking into place. "You're not just a restaurant owner." "No." The single word hung between us, heavy with implication. I should have been scared. Should have asked to be let out of the car immediately. Instead, I felt something closer to relief. Because whatever Dante Caruso was, whatever he did, it was clear that Marcus had been genuinely afraid of him, and I couldn't remember the last time anyone had been able to make Marcus afraid. We pulled up in front of my building, a walk-up in a neighborhood that was trying hard to be respectable but couldn't quite hide its rough edges. The security door had been broken for 3 months. The hallway, light on the second floor, flickered constantly. It was all I could afford. Dante looked at the building, his expression unreadable. "What floor?" "3rd. "But you don't need to—" He was already out of the car. We climbed 3 flights of stairs in silence. I was hyper-aware of him behind me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that reminded me of cedar and rain. When we reached my door, I fumbled with my keys, hands still shaking slightly. "Wait." Dante put his hand on my wrist, gentle. Just enough pressure to stop me from unlocking the door. "Let me check first." It took him 30 seconds to go through my tiny apartment. Kitchen barely big enough for one person. Living room with a couch I'd bought used. Bedroom with a bed and not much else. I stood in the doorway watching him move through my space with the focused attention of someone conducting a professional security sweep. "It's clear," he said finally. "But your locks are inadequate. Anyone with basic skills could get through them in under a minute. I just changed them last week. That's all I could afford. I'll send someone tomorrow to install better ones. And a security camera for your door." "I can't pay for that." He turned to face me fully, and I realized we were standing very close in my small living room. "I'm not asking you to pay. Consider it an investment in my peace of mind." "Why would you care about my peace of mind?" The question hung there. Too direct, too honest. The kind of thing you weren't supposed to ask strangers, no matter how many times they saved you in one evening. Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had gone soft, almost distant. "My mother stayed with my father for 20 years. He had what they used to call a temper. What we'd now call domestic violence." His jaw tightened. "By the time she finally left, she was so broken she didn't know how to be whole again. She died 5 years later, and I've always believed that relationship killed her, even if the actual cause was cancer. I didn't know what to say. Didn't have words for the ache in my chest that came from understanding exactly what he meant. So yes," he continued, "I care about your peace of mind, Sofia, because I couldn't protect my mother. But I can do something about situations I see happening in front of me." He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. "My number." He handed me a business card. Thick, and expensive, with embossed lettering. If he comes back when he comes back, you call me immediately. Not the police. Not your friends. Me, the police, will arrive in 15 minutes, file a report, and tell you they can't do anything unless he actually hurts you. Dante's expression had gone hard. I can do something before it gets to that point. After he left, I stood in my apartment holding that business card and trying to understand what had just happened. A man I'd never met had defended me, driven me home, promised to improve my security, and given me his direct number for emergencies. A man who was clearly dangerous in ways I was only beginning to understand. I should have thrown the card away, should have stuck to official channels, police, lawyers, the system that was supposed to protect people like me. Instead, I tucked it into my wallet behind my driver's license, right where I'd see it every time I looked for anything else, just in case. Marcus came back 4 days later. I'd been half expecting it, sleeping light, jumping at every sound in the hallway. The new locks had been installed. Dante had sent 2 men who worked with silent efficiency and left me with a security system I definitely couldn't have afforded. The camera above my door fed to an app on my phone, and I'd checked it obsessively since installation. Friday night, 11:45. I was getting ready for bed when my phone buzzed with a notification from the camera. Someone was in the hallway outside my apartment. Marcus. He stood there, staring at my door, swaying slightly. Drunk, probably, based on how he moved. His fist raised, then lowered, then raised again like he was deciding whether to knock or just break through. My hands shook as I pulled up Dante's number. 3 rings. Sofia. His voice came through clear, fully alert despite the late hour. What's wrong? He's outside my door. Marcus. The camera, I can see him. And he's... My voice cracked. I don't know if he's going to leave or try to break in, and the police will take too long to get here. Lock yourself in the bathroom. Don't come out until I tell you. I heard movement on his end. Doors opening. An engine starting. I'm 12 minutes away. Dante. Bathroom, Sofia. Now. I ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the closed toilet seat with my phone clutched in both hands. Through the door, I could hear Marcus now, pounding on the apartment. Entrance. Shouting my name. The words were slurred, but the anger underneath them came through crystal clear. 8 minutes later, the pounding stopped. Voices in the hallway, too muffled to make out words, but I recognized the tone of the conversation. Marcus saying something aggressive. Another voice responding with deadly calm that I knew was Dante. Then silence. My phone rang. You can come out now. I opened the bathroom door, crept through my apartment, and looked at the security camera feed. The hallway was empty. When I opened my apartment door, still chained, just enough to see out, Dante stood there alone. Where is he? Gone. He won't be back tonight. Something in Dante's expression made me not want to ask for details. But Sofia, this is going to keep happening. Men like Marcus don't stop because of locks or cameras or restraining orders. They stop when they understand there are consequences they can't handle. What kind of consequences? He looked at me for a long Terex moment. The kind that make the problem permanent. I should have been horrified. Should have told him no, absolutely not. We live in a civilized society with laws and due process. Instead, I thought about 18 months of walking on eggshells, of covering bruises, of apologizing for things that weren't my fault. Thought about Marcus's fist raised to my door tonight. About the restraining order that meant nothing. About how I'd never feel safe as long as he was out there deciding when and how to terrorize me. I can't ask you to do that, I whispered. You're not asking. I'm offering. Dante's voice was gentle but firm. And before you decide, you should know that I don't do this lightly. But I've seen how this story ends too many times. I've watched women try to protect themselves through legal channels that don't work. Watched them end up in hospitals or worse because the system failed them. He stepped closer, and I realized his hands were scraped. He'd clearly done something. Physical in that hallway. Something more than just talking. I'm giving you a choice, he said quietly. Real protection, or the illusion of it. But you need to understand that real protection in my world comes with methods you might not be comfortable with. I looked down at my hands, at the faint yellow bruise on my wrist from the last time Marcus had grabbed me. Looked at the dead bolt I'd just had installed, knowing it wouldn't stop someone truly determined. Looked at this stranger who'd stepped into my nightmare and offered me the one thing I'd been desperate for, safety. If I say yes, I asked carefully, will he? He'll stop being a problem. That's all you need to know. I took a shaky breath. Made a choice I'd have to live with for the rest of my life. Yes. Dante nodded once. Go back inside. Lock the door. Don't come out until morning. I did as he said. Locked the door, turned off the lights, and lay in my bed staring at the ceiling while the city moved on outside my patas window. Somewhere in Chicago, Marcus was having a conversation he wouldn't walk away from the same person, and I was choosing to let it happen. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay there thinking about consequences and choices and the difference between murder and protection. Thinking about Dante's mother who died broken. About my own grandmother who'd told me once that sometimes the only way to stop a fire was to let it burn itself out, no matter what got consumed in the process. At 7 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. It's handled. Dante's voice. Calm and matter of fact. You won't hear from Marcus again. Is he? I couldn't finish the question. He's alive. But he understands now that Chicago isn't safe for him anymore. By this afternoon, he'll be on a bus to somewhere far away, and he won't come back. Relief flooded through me so intensely I started crying. Huge, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep, releasing months of terror I hadn't known I was carrying. Sofia, Dante's voice gentled. You're safe now. 3 words. Simple, declarative, impossible. But for the first time in 18 months, I believed them. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange haze of normalcy that felt anything but normal. Marcus didn't call, didn't text, didn't appear outside my apartment or my workplace or anywhere in the carefully constructed perimeter of my life. He was just gone. Detective Morrison came by Marcello's on a Tuesday afternoon, his tired eyes and rumpled suit, suggesting he'd seen too much of humanity's worst and wasn't surprised by any of it anymore. He asked about Marcus, about the restraining order, about whether I'd had any contact since the incident at the restaurant. No, I said. And it was technically true. I hadn't had any contact. Dante had handled everything. His landlord reported him missing 3 days ago, Morrison said, watching my face carefully. Said Marcus cleared out his apartment in the middle of the night. Took everything. Left no forwarding address. I don't know anything about that. His car was found abandoned near the Greyhound station. Morrison flipped through his notepad. Security footage shows him getting on a bus headed to Nevada, alone. Looked nervous. I kept my expression neutral, the way I'd learned to do during 18 months of hiding what Marcus did to me. Maybe he finally decided to move on. Maybe. But Morrison's tone suggested he didn't believe in maybes. You wouldn't happen to know Dante Caruso, would you? My heart rate kicked up, but I forced myself to meet his eyes steadily. He owns the restaurant. He was here the night Marcus violated the restraining order. He helped get Marcus to leave. Helped. Morrison repeated the word like he was tasting something bitter. Dante Caruso doesn't help, Miss Reyes. He owns. He controls. He makes problems disappear. He leaned forward slightly. I can't prove anything, but if you're involved with him, you should know that. His world has a way of consuming people. After he left, I stood in the empty restaurant trying to decide if I should be more afraid of Marcus, who'd terrorized me for 18 months, or Dante, who'd made that terror disappear with a single conversation in a hallway. Angela found me there 20 minutes later. You okay? The police came asking about Marcus. She didn't look surprised. And about Dante? How did you know? Sofia. Everyone knows who Dante Caruso is. She sat down at the bar, gestured for me to join her. His family has run most of the Italian businesses on the north side for 3 generations. Restaurants, import companies, construction, all legitimate on paper. And not on paper? Angela shrugged. I don't ask questions I don't want answers to. But I know that people who cross the Caruso family tend to leave Chicago very suddenly. And I know that Dante's been coming here 4 nights a week since the thing with Marcus. Always sitting at the bar, always watching, to make sure you're okay. I turned to look at the bar, at the 3rd stool from the left where Dante had been sitting with metronomic consistency. Wednesday through Saturday nights, 7:30 to 10. Ordering the veal piccata and a glass of Barolo. Working on his phone or laptop. Occasionally talking in low voices with the men who accompanied him. Always positioned where he could see the entire restaurant. Always positioned where he could see me. He's protecting you, Angela said quietly. The question is what you're going to do about it. What I did about it was try to return to normal life. I went to work, smiled at customers, saved my tips in the jar I kept hidden in my closet. Slowly, incrementally, my savings account crept upward. Another 6 months and I'd have enough for my grandmother's medical debt, The bills that had piled up in her final year when the cancer treatment stopped working and the palliative care began. That debt was why I'd stayed with Marcus as long as I had. He'd offered to help pay it off. Made it sound like love instead of leverage. By the time I understood the difference, I was already trapped. Thursday night, 3 weeks after Marcus disappeared, Dante approached me directly for the first time since that night in my hallway. Sofia. His voice made me turn from the table I was clearing. Do you have a moment? My break's not for another hour. Robert, Dante called to my manager without looking away from me. Sofia's taking her break now. Robert nodded immediately. Of course, Mr. Caruso. We sat at a corner table, away from other diners, away from Angela's curious eyes at the bar. Dante had a way of making space feel private even in public places, like his presence created a bubble that sound couldn't quite penetrate. How are you sleeping? He asked. The directness of it caught me off guard. Better. The nightmares are less frequent. But they're still happening. It wasn't a question. Somehow he knew. Sometimes I dream that Marcus comes back, that the door opens and he's standing there, and this time there's no camera, no phone, no way to call for help. Dante was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes studying my face with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. He's not coming back. But I understand that knowing something intellectually and believing it emotionally are different things. Detective Morrison thinks I should be afraid of you instead. You should be. No. Hesitation, no attempt to soften it. I'm not a good man. Sofia, I've done things that would horrify you if you knew the details, but I am a man who keeps his word. And I gave you my word that you're safe. Why? The question I'd been holding back for 3 weeks finally broke free. You don't know me. Why did you step in? Why do you keep coming here? Why do you care? He leaned back in his chair, and for a moment, his carefully controlled expression cracked enough that I saw something raw underneath. My mother's name was Cecilia. She was 20 when she married my father, 38 when she finally left him. 18 years of being told she was worthless, stupid, that she should be grateful he kept her around. His jaw tightened. He never hit her where it would show. Always careful, always calculated, and she never told anyone because she was ashamed, thought it was her fault somehow. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be safe. He pulled something from his jacket pocket, a phone, small and sleek. This is for you. It has my number programmed, plus emergency contacts for my security team. If you ever feel unsafe, if anything happens that concerns you, you use this. Dante, I can't accept. Yes, you can. His tone left no room for argument. And you will, because the alternative is you being vulnerable, and I won't allow that. I took the phone, feeling its weight in my palm. You won't allow it? I'm not yours to allow things for. Something flickered in his expression. No, you're not, but you're under my protection now, and that means I have a responsibility to ensure you stay safe. I didn't ask for your protection. You didn't have to. He stood, straightened his jacket with precise movements. Finish your shift. I'll have my driver take you home. I can take the bus. You could, but you won't. He looked down at me, and there was something in his eyes that made my breath catch. Let me do this, Sofia. Let me give you the safety my mother never had. After he left, I sat there holding the phone and trying to understand what was happening. This man, this dangerous man who made people disappear and owned half the North Side, had appointed himself my protector without asking permission. Should have felt like another cage, another form of control. Instead, it felt like breathing room I hadn't known I needed. The following Tuesday, I discovered exactly how thoroughly Dante had woven protection into my life. I was walking home from the evening, shift stupid, I knew, but the bus had been delayed, and I was exhausted when I noticed the car. Black sedan, tinted windows, following about half a block behind me. My heart jumped into my throat. Marcus had driven a black sedan. I pulled out the phone Dante had given me, finger hovering over his contact, when the car pulled up beside me and the window rolled down. Miss Reyes. The driver was young, maybe late 20s, with neat dark hair and the same watchful eyes as the men who accompanied Dante. Mr. Caruso sent me to escort you home. The bus routes aren't safe this time of night. How did you know I was walking? We monitor the security systems Mr. Caruso installed in your building. The camera at the bus stop shows you waited for 20 minutes before leaving. He sent me to intercept you. Part of me should have been disturbed by the level of surveillance. Instead, I felt oddly relieved. He's watching my building? He's ensuring your safety. The driver's expression was carefully neutral. Please, Miss Reyes. Get in the car. Chicago is dangerous enough without taking unnecessary risks. The car smelled like leather and subtle cologne. The driver, he introduced himself as Marco, navigated through traffic with professional efficiency. How long have you worked for Dante? I asked. 7 years. Since I was 21. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Mr. Caruso took me in when I had nowhere else to go. Gave me purpose, training, a place in the family. The family? Marco's expression shifted slightly, like he was choosing his words carefully. The people who work for Mr. Caruso aren't just employees. We're bound together by loyalty and mutual protection. He takes care of us. We take care of his interests. And I'm one of his interests now? You're more than that. Marco pulled up in front of my building. You're someone he's chosen to protect personally. That's rare. That's significant. After he drove away, I climbed the 3 flights to my apartment, hyper-aware of the camera above my door. Was Dante watching right now? Did he monitor the feed himself? Or did he have people who did that for him? Inside, I poured a glass of wine I couldn't really afford and sat on my second-hand couch, trying to process the reality of my situation. 3 weeks ago, I'd been terrorized by an abusive ex-boyfriend with no real way out. Now I was under the protection of a man who commanded enough power to make problems disappear, who had people monitoring my movements, who'd integrated me into some kind of structure I didn't fully understand. I should have felt trapped. Instead, I felt safer than I had in 2 years. My regular phone, the one I'd had before, Dante buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Did you really think changing your locks would keep me out? Did you think I'd just give up? I'm coming back for what's mine, Sofia. And when I do, your new friend won't be able to stop me. My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Marcus. Somehow Marcus had gotten a new number. Somehow he was still out there, still threatening. The phone Dante had given me rang. His name flashed across the screen. Sofia. His voice was calm but edged with steel. I know you just received a threatening text. Marco called me the moment your heart rate spiked. The building security measures include biometric monitoring that alerts us to distress. He said he's coming back. He said you can't stop him. He's wrong. Flat, absolute certainty. And he's about to learn exactly how wrong. Where are you right now? In my apartment. Door locked, windows closed. Good. Stay there. I'm sending Marco back with 2 additional men. They'll remain outside your building tonight. And Sofia? His voice softened fractionally. Marcus sent that text from a burner phone in Nevada. He's nowhere near Chicago. This is psychological warfare, not physical threat. How do you know where he is? Because I have people watching him. No hesitation, no apology for the invasion of privacy. He left Chicago, but I wasn't naive enough to think he'd stay gone permanently. So I've had eyes on him since he crossed the state line. The casual way he said it, the absolute confidence that he could track someone across state lines, could monitor their movements, could know their location in real time, should have terrified me. Instead, it made me feel protected in a way the legal system never had. What are you going to do? I'm going to remind him why he left. Permanently this time. Dante paused. But first I need to know something, Sofia. Are you comfortable with how I handle this? Because once I do what needs to be done, there's no going back. You'll be choosing my methods over legal ones. I thought about Detective Morrison's warning, about the restraining order that Marcus had violated immediately, about 18 months of bruises and apologies, and the constant fear that one day he'd go too far and I'd end up in a hospital or worse. I'm comfortable with it, I said quietly. I choose your methods. Then it's handled. Get some sleep. You're safe. But I didn't sleep. I lay in bed watching the camera feed on the phone Dante had given me, watching Marco and 2 other men take up positions around my building with the professional precision of people who'd done this many times before. Around 3 a.m. Exhaustion finally pulled me under. I dreamed of my grandmother, of the small house where I'd grown up, of her teaching me to make empanadas in her kitchen that always smelled like cumin and cilantro. In the dream, she looked at me with those dark eyes that had always seen too much. Mija, she said. Sometimes the only way to survive is to let someone else fight your battles. There's no shame in accepting help, only in refusing it when you need it most. I woke to sunlight streaming through my window and a text from Dante. The problem has been permanently resolved. Marcus won't contact you again. I didn't ask what permanently resolved meant. Didn't want to know if it meant another bus ticket to somewhere even farther away, or something more final. What mattered was that, for the first time in 2 years, I could breathe without constantly looking over my shoulder. Dante didn't come to Marcello's for a week after that. His absence felt louder than his presence had been, and I found myself watching the door during my shifts, waiting for him to walk in with that controlled grace and those dark eyes that saw too much. He's handling business in New York, Angela told me Thursday night, noticing my distraction. His cousin texted me. They'll be back next week. His cousin? Nico. He comes in sometimes for the veal marsala. She gave me a knowing look. The family is close. They handle problems together. I wanted to ask what kind of problems, but I already knew. The kind that made people leave Chicago suddenly. The kind that got resolved permanently. When Dante finally returned, it was late on a Tuesday night. The restaurant was closing, just me and Angela finishing cleanup while Robert counted the register in his office. The front door shouldn't have been unlocked, but somehow Dante walked in anyway, moving through the dimly lit restaurant like he owned it, which, I was beginning to suspect, he did in more ways than just the deed and liquor license. Sofia. My name and his voice always sounded different, softer, like he was handling something fragile. Can we talk? Angela made herself scarce with impressive speed. I set down the cloth I'd been using to wipe tables and turned to face him. He looked tired. Not physically, his suit was still immaculate, his posture still perfect, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he'd seen things in the past week that had cost him something. I need to be honest with you, he said without preamble. About what I am, what I do. Because you deserve to make informed choices about whether you want me in your life. Okay. He gestured to a table and we sat, the empty restaurant feeling vast and intimate at the same time. My family has been involved in organized crime for 3 generations, he said, each word careful and deliberate. My grandfather started with protection rackets in the 1950s. My father expanded into construction, importing legitimate businesses that served as fronts for less legitimate operations. Gambling, loan sharking, territorial control. He looked directly at me. When my father died 5 years ago, I inherited everything. The businesses, the territory, the obligations, and I've been trying to steer us toward legitimacy ever since. But changing an organization like ours doesn't happen overnight. There are still operations that exist outside the law, still situations that require solutions the legal system can't provide. Like what happened with Marcus. Yes. No hesitation, no softening of the truth. What happened with Marcus is typical of how I handle threats to people under my protection. I gave him a choice: leave and never come back, or face consequences that would be significantly more permanent. He chose the first option. Twice now. I processed that. So he's still alive. For now. But if he makes the mistake of returning to Chicago a 3rd time, that will change. Dante's expression was calm, but underneath it ran something cold and absolute. I don't make idle threats, Sofia. When I say someone is handled, I mean it completely. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what it means to be connected to me. He leaned forward slightly. If you choose to keep accepting my protection, to keep me in your life in any capacity, you're choosing to exist adjacent to this world. That comes with benefits, safety, resources, the knowledge that people who might hurt you will face consequences. But it also comes with costs. Questions from police. Suspicion from people who think they understand what I am. The constant awareness that violence is never far from the surface. He reached across the table, but didn't touch me. Just let his hand rest there, open, palm up. An offering, not a demand. I'm giving you a choice right now, Sofia. You can thank me for handling Marcus. Go back to your normal life, and I'll make sure you stay protected from a distance. You'll never see me again, but you'll remain safe because I'll have people watching. Or you can choose to let me stay close. To keep having these conversations. To build something between us that acknowledges what I am while exploring what we might become to each other. His dark eyes held mine. But if you choose that, you're choosing it with full knowledge. No illusions. No pretending I'm something I'm not. I looked at his hand, still resting on the table between us. Thought about the past month. About Marcus's terror when Dante had spoken. About sleeping through the night, without nightmares for the first time in 2 years. About Marco and the other men who'd stood guard outside my building, about the security systems and the phone and the casual way Dante had said, "I have people watching him." About his mother, Cecilia, who'd endured 18 years of abuse because no one had stepped in to protect her. I put my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and careful, and something shifted in the air between us. Not quite romantic, not yet, but something that carried possibility like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. "I choose you," I said quietly. "Whatever that means. I choose your protection and your honesty and your dangerous world, because it's better than the dangerous world I was living in before." Dante lifted my hand, pressed his lips to my knuckles in a gesture that felt oddly old-fashioned and achingly intimate. "Then you have all of me, Sofia, for as long as you want it." 3 months later, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have predicted when I'd first put my hand in Dante's that night at Marcello's. I still worked at the restaurant, insisted on it, actually, despite Dante's gentle suggestions that I didn't need to. But the job felt different now. I wasn't invisible anymore. Customers treated me with a deference I hadn't earned. Managers accommodated my schedule without question, and the tips had mysteriously increased across the board. It took me 2 weeks to realize that everyone knew. Not the details, not the specifics, but they knew that Sofia Reyes was under Dante Caruso's protection. And in this neighborhood, in this world, that changed everything. "You're glowing," Angela observed on a Friday night in late January. Snow fell outside, turning Chicago into something almost beautiful. Like someone who's getting regular sleep and even more regular. Don't finish that sentence. But I was smiling, because she wasn't wrong. Dante and I had fallen into a rhythm that felt both natural and surreal. Dinners at restaurants where he was greeted like royalty, quiet evenings at his penthouse overlooking the lake, where he cooked for me while I studied for my GED. Another thing he'd insisted on: enrollment fees mysteriously paid, tutors mysteriously available. "Your grandmother wanted you to finish high school," he'd said when I'd protested. "Honor her memory by completing what she started." The physical relationship had developed slowly, carefully, with Dante constantly checking that I was comfortable, that I wanted this, that nothing felt like obligation. It was the opposite of Marcus in every way: patient where Marcus had been demanding, gentle where Marcus had been rough, respectful where Marcus had been possessive. "I need you to understand something," Dante had said the first night I'd stayed at his penthouse. We'd been on his couch, the Chicago skyline glittering beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, and his hands had been cupped around my face with infinite gentleness. "You never owe me anything, Sofia. Not your body, not your time, not your affection. What I do for you, I do because I choose to, because you deserve protection and care, not because I expect payment of any kind." I'd kissed him then, pouring 2 years of touch starvation and 3 months of growing trust into that contact. When we'd finally made it to his bedroom hours later, I'd cried not from fear or pain, but from the overwhelming relief of being touched with reverence instead of entitlement. Now, 3 months into whatever we were calling this relationship, I'd moved some of my things into his penthouse. Not everything. I kept my apartment as a safety net, a reminder that I could leave if I needed to, but enough that his space felt like ours, that waking up in his bed had become my new normal. "Table 9 needs their check," Marco called from the kitchen. He'd started working as a server 2 nights a week. Dante's way of keeping additional eyes on the restaurant without making it obvious. And Mr. Caruso just texted, "He'll be here in 20 minutes. My heart did that stupid flutter thing it always did when I knew I'd see him soon. Angela noticed and laughed. 3 months and you still get that look. It's disgustingly sweet. Shut up. Make me. But her teasing was affectionate, and I knew she was genuinely happy for me. She'd seen what I'd been like before, jumpy, exhausted, covering bruises and flinching at sudden movements. The transformation had been visible enough that even customers commented on it. Dante arrived exactly 20 minutes later, and as always, the energy in the restaurant shifted when he walked through the door. Conversations paused briefly, people straightened in their seats, and the ambient anxiety that came with his presence settled over everything like snow. But when his dark eyes found mine across the room, they softened in a way I was learning was reserved exclusively for me. "Sofia." He approached the bar where I was processing credit card payments. "I need to talk to you about something. Can you take a break?" The seriousness in his tone made my stomach tighten. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. But there's a situation developing that you need to be aware of." He glanced at Robert, who'd appeared from his office. "Sofia's taking her break." "Of course, Mr. Caruso." We sat in his usual corner booth, and Dante took my hands across the table. His thumbs traced circles on my palms, a gesture I'd learned meant he was choosing his words carefully. "There's a family from New York," he said finally. "The Salvatores. They've been trying to expand their territory into Chicago for the past year, and they've become more aggressive in recent months." "Aggressive how?" "Pushing into businesses that are under our protection. Making offers to restaurant owners, construction companies, import operations. Offers that come with implied threats if they're refused." His jaw tightened. "Last week, they approached 3 of our legitimate partners. Yesterday, they made their first move into one of my restaurants." "What happened?" "Nothing yet. They sent representatives to discuss business opportunities. I declined their offer. They suggested I reconsider." The way he said suggested made it clear the conversation had been more threatening than that. "I'm handling it, but I need you to understand that the next few weeks might be tense. There might be situations where I'm less available, where security around you increases, where I need you to be more careful than usual." "Okay." I kept my voice steady even though my pulse had kicked up. "What do you need me to do?" "I'm assigning additional protection. Marco will be with you at all times when you're not at work or in the penthouse. The security systems at your apartment are being upgraded again, and I need you to promise me that if anything feels off, if anyone approaches you that you don't know, you call me immediately." "You think they'll come after me?" "I think you're the most obvious way to hurt me." His voice had gone hard. "And the Salvatores have a reputation for targeting civilians to gain leverage. I won't let them get close to you, Sofia, but I need you to be vigilant." I thought about Marcus, about Russian threats, about 3 months of relative peace that had apparently been too good to last. "I understand. There's something else." He hesitated, which was unusual for him. "My mother wants to meet you. Properly, not just the brief introduction when I took you to her house last month." The subject change was so abrupt it took me a moment to process. "Your mother? She's having a family dinner this Sunday. My cousins will be there, some of my key people. It's not optional when my mother requests your presence. You attend." A slight smile. "But I want you to come because I want you to meet the people who matter to me. I want them to meet the woman who matters to me. The woman who matters to me." We hadn't put labels on what we were to each other, hadn't had the "what are we" conversation that I'd learned to dread from past relationships. But hearing him say those words, simple and direct, made something warm unfurl in my chest. "I'd like that," I said. "To meet your family. Fair warning, they'll be evaluating you. Not because they don't trust my judgment, but because they care about me and want to ensure you're not taking advantage." His thumb traced my palm again. "My cousin Nico will probably interrogate you about your intentions. My Aunt Maria will ask invasive questions about when we're getting married. And my mother will watch everything with those eyes that see too much." "Sounds terrifying." "It is." He smiled, and the expression transformed his usually serious face into something younger, softer. "But you've handled worse. You survived, Marcus. You've adapted to my world. You've chosen to stay despite every reason to run. You can handle my family." Sunday dinner at Dante's mother's house was exactly as intimidating as promised. The house itself was modest, a 2-story, in a quiet neighborhood that could have belonged to any middle-class Italian family. But the security measures were anything but modest. Cameras at every angle, men in dark suits positioned at strategic points, technology that probably cost more than the entire property value. Dante kept his hand on the small of my back as we walked up the front steps, a gesture of support and claim that I'd come to appreciate. "Remember," he murmured, "they love me, which means they'll want to love you. Just be yourself." The door opened before we could knock. A woman in her 60s stood there, Cecilia Caruso, Dante's mother, dressed in elegant black slacks and a burgundy blouse. Her dark eyes, so like her son's, assessed me with uncomfortable accuracy. "Sofia." She took my hands in both of hers. "Welcome to my home. Come inside. Everyone is waiting." Everyone turned. Out to be 15 people crowded into a living room that smelled like garlic and tomatoes and bread fresh from the oven. Dante performed introductions with patient efficiency. His cousin Nico, tall and lean with calculating eyes. His Aunt Maria, who immediately started asking about my family background. Various uncles and cousins whose names blurred together in my nervous state. Marco was there too, which surprised me until I realized that family in Dante's world meant more than blood relations. "So," Nico said, cornering me near the appetizer table while Dante was deep in conversation with one of his uncles. "You're the waitress who caught my cousin's attention." I prefer to think of myself as the woman he's dating, but yes, I'm a waitress. His expression flickered with something that might have been approval. Good. You have a spine. You'll need it in this family. He popped an olive into his mouth. What are your intentions toward Dante? My intentions? He's been alone for a long time. Deliberately, said he didn't have time for relationships, that they were liabilities in our line of work. Nico studied me with uncomfortable intensity. Then you came along and suddenly he's installing security systems in apartments, having people watch buildings, making problems disappear. That's not casual interest, Sofia. That's investment. So I need to know. Are you in this for what he can give you, or are you in this for him? I thought about how to answer that. About the past 3 months of learning Dante's careful kindness, his dry humor that appeared when he let his guard down, the way he touched me like I was something precious. About how he'd given me safety without demanding ownership, protection without possession. I'm in this because he sees me, I said finally. Not as a charity case or a possession or someone to save. He sees who I am and chooses me anyway. That's rare. That's worth fighting for. Nico's expression softened. Good answer. He clapped me on the shoulder. Welcome to the family, Sofia. Fair warning. We're dysfunctional as hell, but we're loyal. Dinner was chaotic and loud and overwhelming in the best possible way. The table was too small for everyone, so we ate in shifts, plates passed around with the kind of controlled chaos that spoke to years of practice. The food was incredible. Cecilia's cooking, helped by various aunts, who all had opinions about seasoning and technique. I sat between Dante and his mother, feeling his hand rest on my knee under the table, a constant point of contact that anchored me through the overwhelming swirl of family dynamics. My son tells me you're studying for your GED, Cecilia said, passing me more lasagna despite my protests that I was full. What will you do after? I'm not sure yet. Maybe community college? I've been thinking about business management, or maybe culinary school. I glanced at Dante. I've been saving money, but it'll take time. Time we have, Dante said quietly. And tuition is an investment, not an expense. I'm not asking you to pay for my education. You're not asking. I'm offering. His voice held that gentle firmness I'd learned meant there was no point arguing. Let me do this, Sofia. Let me invest in your future. Across the table, Maria smiled. He's his mother's son. We take care of the people we love. The people we love. Neither Dante nor I had used that word yet, had danced around it with careful euphemisms and implications. But hearing it stated so casually by his aunt, seeing the way he didn't contradict it, made something warm and terrifying unfold in my chest. After dinner, while the family settled in the living room for coffee and dessert, Cecilia pulled me aside into her small kitchen. I want to show you something, she said, opening a drawer and pulling out a photograph. It showed a younger version of her, maybe mid-30s, standing beside a man I recognized from other photos as Dante's father. She was smiling, but there was something hollow in her eyes. This was taken 2 months before I finally left him. I looked at the photo, at the woman who'd endured 18 years of abuse, and saw echoes of myself in that hollow smile. Dante told you about his father? Some. That he hurt you. That Dante couldn't protect you until he was old enough. She nodded, carefully putting the photo back in the drawer. My greatest failure as a mother was staying as long as I did. Letting my son grow up in a house where violence was normal, where women accepted abuse as the price of security. Her dark eyes met mine. But my greatest success was raising a son who saw that evil and chose to be different. He is different. Yes. She took my hands. But he's still his father's son in some ways. He has that same intensity, that same capacity for controlled violence when he deems it necessary. The difference is that Dante's violence is protective, not possessive. He uses it to defend, not to dominate. I know. I've seen it. Good. Because there are hard times coming, Sofia. Her grip on my hands tightened. The Salvatoras are dangerous, and they're not going to back down easily. Dante is trying to handle this diplomatically, but if that fails... She trailed off, the implication clear. He'll do what he has to do. Yes. And you need to decide if you can accept that. If you can love a man who sometimes has to make choices that exist outside the law, outside conventional morality. She released my hands. I'm not trying to scare you away. I'm trying to prepare you. Because if you're going to be with my son, you need to understand what that means completely. That night, Lying in Dante's bed with his arm around me and the city lights painting patterns on the ceiling, I thought about Cecilia's words. About love and violence and the complicated morality of protection. "Your family likes me," I said into the darkness. "They love you." His voice was rough with exhaustion. Nico sent me 3 texts after dinner. All variations of, "Don't screw this up. Your mother showed me a photo, from before she left your father." Dante's arm tightened around me. "What did she say?" "That hard times are coming. That I need to be prepared for what loving you means." He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice held careful vulnerability. "Is that what you're doing? Loving me?" I turned to face him, seeing his expression in the dim light from the windows. "I think I've been doing it for a while now. I was just waiting for you to catch up." He kissed me then, soft and deep, and tasting like the wine we'd had with dinner. When we broke apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. "I love you, Sofia Reyes. I've loved you since the night you chose to trust me despite every reason not to. Since you put your hand in mine and decided my dangerous world was better than the alternative." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "And I will spend every day of my life ensuring you never regret that choice. I won't regret it. You can't know that." "Yes, I can." I kissed him again. "Because you're not him, Dante. You're not Marcus or your father or anyone who's ever hurt someone they claim to love. You're the man who saw me being abused and stepped in without being asked, who gave me protection without demanding payment, who's trying to build something legitimate from a legacy of violence." I cupped his face in my hands. "So yes, I love you. And no, I won't regret it. Even when things get hard." They got hard 3 days later. I was closing up at Marcello's on a Wednesday night, the last server to leave after a surprisingly busy evening. Marco walked me to my car, a new sedan that Dante had insisted on buying after my old Honda finally died, and waited until I was safely inside before heading to his own vehicle. The drive back to the penthouse took 20 minutes through Chicago's quiet streets. I was thinking about the test I had coming up, about whether I should accept Dante's offer to pay for college, about the strange surreality of my life now compared to 6 months ago. I didn't notice the car following me until it was too late. It pulled up beside me at a red light, dark and anonymous with tinted windows. I felt the prickle of awareness that came from living in Dante's world, reached for my phone to call him. The passenger window exploded inward in a shower of safety glass. I screamed, ducking instinctively as hands reached through the broken window, trying to unlock my door from the inside. Training Dante had insisted on kicked in. I slammed on the gas, running the red light, horn blaring to warn any cross-traffic. The car followed. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. I fumbled for my phone, hit Dante's contact, put it on speaker as I took a hard right turn that made my tires squeal. "Sofia. Someone's following me." They broke my window, tried to grab me at the light on. Ashland and Division. Another turn. Trying to remember the defensive driving tactics Marco had taught me. "I'm heading toward the penthouse, but they're right behind me." "I see you." His voice had gone deadly calm. "Security cameras picked up your car. I have people on the way. Can you make it to the underground parking garage?" "I think so." The pursuing car rammed into my rear bumper hard enough to jerk me forward against the seatbelt. I gasped, barely keeping control. "They hit me. Dante, they're trying to run me off the road. 2 more blocks, Sofia. Marco is 1 block away. Just hold on." The longest 2 blocks of my life. The car behind me kept ramming, trying to force me into a side street where they could box me in. I gripped the wheel with white-knuckle intensity, focusing on staying on the main road, staying where there were cameras and witnesses, and Marco's SUV appeared from a side street, cutting off my pursuers with aggressive precision. I heard the screech of metal on metal, saw in my rearview mirror as 2 more vehicles, Dante's people, surrounded the car that had been chasing me. "Take the next right," Dante instructed through the phone. "Go straight to the garage. I'm waiting." He was standing in the underground parking garage of his building, flanked by 4 men in dark suits, his expression so coldly furious it made me grateful that rage wasn't directed at me. I pulled into my designated spot, and he was at my car door before I'd even turned off the engine. His hands cupped my face, eyes scanning for injuries with professional efficiency. "Are you hurt? Are you hurt?" "No." Shaken, but not hurt. I realized I was trembling, adrenaline crash hitting hard now that I was safe. They broke my window, tried to grab me. "If I hadn't run that light, you did exactly right." He pulled me against him, one hand cradling the back of my head. You stayed calm, called me immediately, got yourself to safety. I'm proud of you, Sofia. Over his shoulder, I saw Marco and the other men pulling someone from the vehicle that had been pursuing me. A man I didn't recognize, young, maybe mid-20s, already bleeding from a cut above his eye. Who is he? I asked. Dante's expression hardened. Someone who's about to answer a lot of questions. I didn't sleep that night. Dante had wanted me to take something to help, offered medication, whiskey, anything that might let me rest, but I refused. My mind kept replaying those moments. The window exploding, hands reaching for me, the sickening crunch of metal on metal. This was the Salvatore's, Dante said around 3 a.m. We were in his living room, me curled against him on the couch while dawn threatened beyond the windows. The man we captured confirmed it before interrogation became unnecessary. I didn't ask what that meant, didn't want to know the specifics of what interrogation looked like in Dante's world. What do they want? You, as leverage to force me into concessions. His arm tightened around me. They miscalculated. They thought taking you would make me weak, willing to negotiate from a position of fear. Instead, they've guaranteed that there's no diplomatic solution. His voice had gone flat, emotionless in a way that was somehow more frightening than anger. I was trying to handle this peacefully. Establish boundaries, negotiate territories, avoid bloodshed. But they came after you, Sofia. They tried to take you. That crosses a line that can't be uncrossed. I pulled back to look at his face. What are you going to do? I'm going to war. Simple, declarative, absolute. The Salvatores will be gone from Chicago within a week. Their operations will be dismantled. Their people will be given the choice to leave or face consequences. And their leadership will understand that some cities are not worth the cost of conquest. People will die. Yes. He didn't sugarcoat it. Didn't try to. Soften the reality. I'll try to minimize casualties, give people chances to walk away peacefully. But some won't take those chances. And I won't hesitate to protect what's mine. What's mine? The possessiveness in those words should have triggered every warning bell Marcus had left in my psyche. Instead, I felt oddly reassured, because Dante's possessiveness wasn't about ownership, it was about protection, about drawing lines in the sand and daring anyone to cross them. I'm scared, I admitted quietly. Good. Fear keeps you careful, keeps you vigilant. He kissed my forehead. But Sofia, you need to understand something. I will burn this entire city to ash before I let anyone hurt you. That's not hyperbole. That's a promise. The next 3 days were a masterclass in organized violence executed with surgical precision. I didn't see most of it. Dante kept me sequestered in the penthouse with round-the-clock security, but I heard about it. From Marco, who came to check on me twice, daily. From news reports that carefully didn't connect the dots between multiple incidents across the North Side. From Dante's increasingly exhausted expression when he came home late each night. Salvatore operations shut down one by one. A gambling house raided by police who suddenly had anonymous tips. A loan sharking operation whose enforcers disappeared overnight. 3 restaurants that had been strong-armed into Salvatore protection suddenly protected by Dante's people instead. How many? I asked on the 4th night, watching Dante move through his nighttime routine with mechanical precision. How many what? How many people have died because they came after me? He stopped, turned to face me. 3. All Salvatore enforcers who chose to fight rather than leave. None of them were civilians. None of them were people who didn't understand the risks of this life. And you're okay with that? No. The honesty of it surprised me. I'm never okay with death, Sofia. Every person who, dies because of decisions I make carries weight. But I'm more okay with their deaths than I would be with yours. That's the calculation I've made. He sat beside me on the bed. I know you didn't sign up for this. For being the reason a conflict escalates. For watching me become someone harder, colder, more willing to use violence. And if you want out, if this is too much, I'll understand. I'll keep you protected regardless, but I'll let you go if that's what you need. I thought about it, really, genuinely considered walking away from this man and this world and the complicated morality of loving someone who killed to protect what he valued. Then I thought about Marcus, about 18 months of abuse, with no real way out, about restraining orders that meant nothing, about how I'd felt safe for the first time in years because Dante had been willing to do what the legal system couldn't. I'm not leaving, I said finally. But Dante. I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll always tell me the truth. No matter how brutal, no matter how much you think it'll hurt me. I took his hand. I can handle hard truths better than comfortable lies. Marcus lied constantly about why he was angry, about whether it was my fault, about how things would change. I can't do that again. Won't do that again. I promise. He brought my hand to his lips. Complete honesty, even when it's difficult. Then I'm staying. Through the war, through whatever comes after. I'm choosing you. The war ended on a Sunday. Dante had been gone since Friday morning, handling the final pieces, he'd said vaguely, and I'd spent 2 days pacing the penthouse, studying for tests I couldn't focus on, jumping at every sound. Marco had tried to distract me with conversation, with updates that carefully omitted anything too violent, with assurances that Dante was fine, was winning, was always 3 steps ahead of anyone who opposed him. When Dante finally walked through the door Sunday evening, I threw myself into his arms with enough force to make him stumble backward. "It's done," he said into my hair. "The Salvatores have agreed to stay out of Chicago permanently. Their leadership has withdrawn. Their operations are dismantled, and we've established clear territorial boundaries with New York families to prevent future incidents." I pulled back to study his face. He looked exhausted but uninjured, his suit still immaculate despite whatever he'd spent the weekend doing. How many this time? 2 more. Both chose to fight. He cupped my face in his hands. "But it's over, Sofia. You're safe. I'm safe. We can breathe again." That night I finally slept. Really slept, deep and dreamless, wrapped in Dante's arms while Chicago moved on outside our windows. When I woke, sunlight was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling glass, and Dante was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Marry me," he said. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "What?" "Marry me, Sofia." He sat up, taking my hand. "I don't have a ring yet, I wanted to ask first. Make sure you'd say yes before I made assumptions. But these past few days, watching you face danger with courage, choosing to stay despite every reason to run, I realized I don't want to wait. Don't want to waste time with carefully planned proposals and romantic gestures. I just want you to be mine legally, officially, in every way that matters. Dante, we've only been together 3 months. I know. It's fast. It's probably reckless. And you have every right to say no." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "But I've spent my entire adult life being careful, calculating every move, building toward some future version of legitimacy that always feels just out of reach. And then you walked into my restaurant with bruises you were trying to hide, and suddenly nothing else mattered except protecting you, building something real with you, creating a future that includes you at the center." He pulled me closer. "So yes, it's fast. But we're not normal people in a normal relationship. We're 2 people who've survived abuse and violence and chosen each other anyway. I don't need more time to know I want to spend my life with you." I looked at this man, this dangerous, complicated man who'd killed for me, who'd gone to war to keep me safe, who was offering me his name and his protection and his impossible love. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I'll marry you." His smile was the most genuine thing I'd ever seen. He kissed me deep and thorough, and for a moment the world narrowed to just us. Just this choice, just the terrifying, beautiful possibility of a future built together. "Fair warning," he murmured against my lips. "My family is going to be insufferable about this. My mother will start planning the wedding before we've even told her. Nico will give speeches about how he knew from the beginning we were perfect for each other. Maria will cry and probably start knitting baby blankets? She's optimistic about timelines." His expression turned more serious. "But Sofia, I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. Marriage to me means being permanently part of this world. It means being a Caruso, with all the protection and danger that name carries. People will respect you, but they'll also see you as a target. You'll never be anonymous again." "I know. And you're okay with that?" I thought about my grandmother, about her teaching me that strength came in many forms, about how she'd survived my grandfather's death and cancer and financial ruin with grace and determination, about how she'd always told me that safety wasn't about avoiding danger, it was about choosing who you face danger with. "I'm okay with it," I said, "because I'd rather face danger as a Caruso with you beside me than face it alone as Sofia Reyes trying to be invisible." "You were never invisible," Dante said softly. "Not to me. From the moment I saw those bruises. You were the most visible person in any room." We told his family that evening at another dinner that somehow manifested with only a few hours' notice. Cecilia cried, just as Dante had predicted. Maria immediately started planning guest lists and venue options. Nico pulled me aside to say, with unusual seriousness, "You're stuck with us now. No returns, no exchanges." "I wouldn't want returns or exchanges." "Good." He squeezed my shoulder. "Because you're family, Sofia. Which means we protect you as fiercely as Dante does." The next few weeks blurred into wedding planning that I had minimal control over. Cecilia and Maria took charge with the focused intensity of Italian mothers who'd been waiting years for this moment. I showed up for dress fittings and menu tastings and nodded agreement to decisions about flowers and music and venue decorations. Dante watched it all with amused tolerance, occasionally pulling me aside to whisper, "Just say no if it's too much. They'll be disappointed for 30 seconds and then move on." But I didn't want to say no, because watching his family embrace me, seeing how much joy our engagement brought them, made me feel part of something larger than just Dante and me. Made me feel like I'd found the family I'd lost when my grandmother died. 2 months after the proposal, on a March afternoon when Chicago was finally remembering how to be warm, I became Sofia Caruso. The wedding was smaller than Maria had wanted, only 50 people, all family or close associates. We held it in a historic church on the north side, then reception at Marcello's, which Dante had closed for the evening despite Robert's protests about lost revenue. I wore my grandmother's lace, carefully preserved and altered to fit. Dante wore a black suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, and when he saw me walking down the aisle, his expression cracked enough that I saw tears in his dark eyes. "You're so beautiful," he whispered when I reached him. "How did I get this lucky?" The ceremony was traditional Catholic vows that both honored his family's heritage and felt strangely appropriate for what we were building. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," Dante cupped my face with infinite gentleness and kissed me like I was the only thing in the universe that mattered. The reception was chaos in the best way. Too much food, too much wine, dancing that went on until nearly midnight. Dante's family embraced me completely. Maria cried through her entire speech about how she'd prayed for years that Dante would find someone worthy of his devotion. Nico's toast was funny and slightly inappropriate and ended with, "Welcome to the family, Sofia. Try not to let Dante's intensity overwhelm you." Around 11, Dante pulled me away from the dance floor to a quiet corner of the restaurant. "Happy?" he asked. Deliriously, I leaned against him, exhausted and overjoyed. "Your family is overwhelming in the best possible way. They love you, almost as much as I do." He kissed my temple. "Are you ready to start our honeymoon? Where are we going?" "You still haven't told me." "Italy. 2 weeks in Tuscany at a villa that's been in my mother's family for generations." He smiled. "No business, no conflicts, no Chicago, just us in wine country and time to breathe." "That sounds perfect." It was perfect. 2 weeks of sleeping late and drinking wine with lunch and making love in a centuries-old bedroom while Italian sun painted everything gold. 2 weeks of Dante without the weight of running an organization, without the constant vigilance, just being the man underneath all the protection and control. We talked about futures, about children eventually, maybe in a few years when things were more stable. About my education plans, about the restaurant management courses I wanted to take, about Dante's continued efforts to legitimize the family businesses, to build something sustainable that didn't require violence to maintain. "I want our children to inherit something clean," he said one afternoon while we sat on the villa's terrace watching sunset paint the Tuscan hills. "Something they can be proud of without having to make the moral compromises I've made. You're doing that. It takes time, but you're building it. With your help." He pulled me into his lap. "You make me want to be better, Sofia. Not just for you, but for the version of myself I see reflected in your eyes." When we returned to Chicago, tanned and relaxed and thoroughly sick of Italian food despite its excellence, reality reasserted itself quickly. Marco met us at the airport with news that a new family from Detroit was making inquiries about Chicago territory. Dante's expression shifted from vacation relaxed to business focused in seconds. "How serious?" "Preliminary. Feeling out boundaries. Nico's been handling it in your absence, but they're asking specifically to meet with you. Set up a meeting, neutral territory, full security." He glanced at me. "Welcome home, Mrs. Caruso. Back to the chaos." But the chaos felt different now. I wasn't just adjacent to Dante's world, I was part of it. When families came to the penthouse for meetings, I sat in on them. When Dante made decisions about territory or operations, he consulted me, not because I had experience or expertise, but because he valued my perspective, my moral compass that hadn't been shaped by generations of organized crime. "You see things I'm too close to see," he explained one evening after a particularly difficult meeting about whether to retaliate against a minor incursion. "You ask questions I've stopped asking because I've accepted certain realities as inevitable. Keep questioning, Sofia. Keep challenging me to find better solutions." 6 months into our marriage, I enrolled in business management courses at community college. Dante had offered to pay for a 4-year university, but I wanted to start smaller, prove to myself I could handle college-level work before committing to something larger. "I'm proud of you," he said, walking me to my first class like an overprotective father. "And I'll try not to hover, but Marco will be nearby just in case. Dante, I'm going to college, not a war zone. To me, there's no difference in terms of ensuring your safety." But he kissed me and let me go, though I spotted Marco in the parking lot when class ended. The months blurred into a rhythm that felt sustainable. I worked part-time at Marcello's, insisted on it despite Dante's protests that I didn't need to. Attended classes 3 days a week. Studied in the penthouse while Dante handled business. Occasionally accompanied him to family dinners or business meetings where my presence was requested. We fought sometimes. I'd inherited enough of my grandmother's stubbornness to push back when Dante's protective instincts became overbearing. But we'd learned to fight productively, to work through disagreements without either of us retreating into silence or anger. "This is what healthy looks like," I said one evening after we'd argued about whether I needed additional security for a study group session. We'd talked it through, compromised on Marco, driving me there and back, but not hovering during the actual study session. Us, working through problems together instead of one person making unilateral decisions. Marcus never compromised. Marcus never saw me as an equal. I curled against Dante on the couch. "You do. That makes all the difference." A year into our marriage, Cecilia started making pointed comments about grandchildren. "I'm not getting any younger," she said over Sunday dinner. "And I'd like to meet my grandchildren before I'm too old to enjoy them." "Mom," Dante said with strained patience, "we've been married a year. Give us time. Your father and I had you within 18 months of marriage. And look how well that turned out," he countered, which made the table go awkwardly silent until Maria changed the subject to a new pasta sauce recipe she'd discovered. But later, lying in bed, I thought about children, about tiny humans who would inherit Dante's dark eyes and my grandmother's stubbornness, about raising them in this world, teaching them about protection and danger, and the complicated morality of power. "Would you want children?" I asked. "Eventually? With you?" "Yes." He pulled me closer. "But only when you're ready. Only when you've finished your education and feel secure in yourself. I won't pressure you, Sofia. What if I'm ready sooner than that?" He went very still. "Are you?" "Maybe. I don't know." I turned to face him. "I just know that when I imagine our future, I see children in it. Little versions of us, learning to navigate this complicated world we've built. Then we'll talk about it." He kissed my forehead. "No pressure, no timeline. Just honest conversations about what we both want." 3 months later, I found out I was pregnant. I stared at the plastic test in my hand, watching the second line appear with crystalline clarity. Positive. Unmistakably, undeniably positive. My hands shook as I set it on the bathroom counter, reaching for the second test in the box. Then the third, all positive. All confirming what my body had been trying to tell me for the past 2 weeks: the exhaustion, the nausea that hit around 10 a.m., the way certain smells made my stomach turn. I was pregnant with Dante Caruso's child. The thought should have terrified me. We'd been married barely 15 months. I was still in school, still working part-time, still figuring out who I was in this new life. But instead of fear, I felt something closer to wonder, like a door had opened to a future I hadn't fully believed in until this moment. "Sofia?" Dante's voice came from the bedroom. "You okay? You've been in there a while." I opened the door, holding all 3 tests, like evidence in a trial. He took one look at my face, then at what I was holding, and his expression transformed through several emotions too quickly to track. "Are you—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Pregnant?" "Yes." I held up the tests, all 3 positive. "I'm maybe 6 weeks along, based on my calculations." He crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, pulling me against him with enough force to nearly lift me off my feet. When he pulled back, I saw tears tracking down his face. "We're having a baby," he said, like he needed to hear the words spoken to believe them. "Sofia, we're having a baby. Are you happy?" I needed to hear it. Needed confirmation that this wasn't too soon, too fast, too much. Happy doesn't cover it. He cupped my face, thumbs brushing away tears. I hadn't realized I was crying. Terrified, overwhelmed, grateful beyond words. But yes, happy. So incredibly happy. We stood there in the bathroom, holding each other while the magnitude of it settled over us. A child. Our child. Someone who would carry both our histories forward into an uncertain future. "We have to tell my mother," Dante said finally. "She's going to lose her mind with joy." He wasn't wrong. Cecilia burst into tears the moment we told her, pulling me into a hug so tight I worried about the tiny cluster of cells currently dividing and growing inside me. Maria started planning a baby shower before we'd even finished sharing the news. Nico looked genuinely emotional, clapping Dante on the back and saying, "About time." I was beginning to think you two were waiting for retirement. Over the next few weeks, as my pregnancy became undeniable reality, Dante's protective instincts kicked into overdrive. He wanted me to quit working immediately. I refused. Wanted me to drop my college courses. I negotiated down to a reduced schedule. Wanted me to have 24-hour security. I compromised on Marco driving me everywhere but not hovering during classes. "You're being overprotective," I said after. Our third argument about whether I could continue working at Marcello's. "I'm being appropriately protective of my pregnant wife who lives in a world where people have literally tried to kidnap her." That was over a year ago. Things have been quiet since. Things are never truly quiet, Sofia. You know that. He ran both hands through his hair, frustration evident. "I can't lose you, either of you. The thought of something happening because I didn't take every possible precaution makes me physically ill." I softened, understanding the fear underneath his controlling impulses. "I know you're scared, but you can't lock me away for 9 months. I need to live, Dante. Need to feel like I'm still myself and not just an incubator you're guarding." We found compromises. I worked at the restaurant 2 nights a week instead of 4. Attended classes with Marco positioned discreetly nearby. Accepted the upgraded security systems and the constant presence of protection without complaint. And, slowly, month by month, my body changed. The morning sickness faded around week 12. My abdomen rounded, subtle at first, then undeniably. By week 20, when the ultrasound technician told us we were having a daughter, Dante broke down completely. "A girl," he whispered, staring at the grainy image on the screen. "We're having a daughter. Does that scare you?" I asked later, watching him study the ultrasound photo like it held secrets to the universe. "Terrifies me." He set the photo down carefully. "The world is dangerous enough. But for a girl, for our daughter, it's exponentially worse. She'll be a target just for existing, just for being a Caruso. She'll also be loved fiercely and protected completely." I took his hand, placed it on my rounded belly where our daughter was currently doing acrobatics. "And she'll have you as a father. That matters more than any danger." The pregnancy wasn't without complications. At week 28, I started having contractions, Braxton. Hicks, the doctor assured us. But Dante nearly had a breakdown. He insisted I go on bed rest despite the doctor saying it wasn't medically necessary. We argued. I won, mostly, but agreed to reduce my activities even further. "I hate seeing you uncomfortable," he said one evening, watching me struggle to find a position that didn't make my back ache. "Hate knowing you're going through this and I can't do anything to help. You can rub my feet," I suggested. And he did. For an hour, while I dozed on the couch with my belly making impressive shapes as our daughter kicked. By week 36, I was done. Done with pregnancy, done with feeling like a whale, done with not being able to see my own feet. I'd finished the semester barely and officially withdrawn from the restaurant, much to Angela's disappointment and Dante's relief. Just a few more weeks, Cecilia assured me during one of her daily check-in visits. She'd taken to stopping by the penthouse every afternoon, bringing food and conversation and the kind of maternal presence I'd missed since my grandmother died. "Then you'll have a beautiful baby, and you'll forget how miserable pregnancy made you." People keep saying that. I don't believe them. "You will," she smiled, that knowing expression of someone who'd been through it. The first time she looks at you, the first time you hold her, everything else fades away. Our daughter arrived 3 weeks early on an October afternoon, when Chicago was preparing for winter. My water broke while I was reading a textbook inappropriately. I'd still been trying to get ahead on next semester's coursework, and Dante went from calm to controlled panic in seconds. Bag. We need your bag. Where's the hospital bag? He was already pulling out his phone, calling Marco, calling the hospital, calling his mother. Dante. I caught his hand. Breathe. We have time. First babies take hours. How do you know that? I've been reading every pregnancy book in existence for self. 8 months. Trust me, we have time. We didn't have as much time as I thought. Our daughter was as impatient as her father, and 7 hours after my water broke, I was holding her 6 pounds, 9 ounces of perfection with dark hair and lungs that proved she had no problem making herself heard. She's beautiful, Dante whispered, tears streaming freely. Sofia. She's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Want to hold her? He took her with the careful reverence of someone handling the most precious object in existence. Our daughter we'd decided on Isabella Marie, after both our grandmothers blinked up at him with dark eyes that would probably lighten eventually but currently looked exactly like her father's. Hello, Isabella, Dante murmured. I'm your papa, and I promise you right now, in this moment, that I will spend every day of my life ensuring you're protected, loved, and free to become whoever you want to be. The family descended within hours. Cecilia crying with joy, holding her granddaughter with practiced ease, Maria bringing enough food to feed the entire hospital wing, Nico looking genuinely awed as he peered at Isabella's tiny face. She's going to have every man in Chicago wrapped around her finger, he predicted, just like her mother did to Dante. Over the next few weeks, as we adjusted to life with a newborn, I watched Dante transform. The man who'd controlled criminal operations with cold efficiency turned into pudding whenever Isabella made the slightest sound. 3 a.m. Feedings, diaper changes, endless pacing to soothe her cries. He did it all without complaint. You're a natural, I said one night, watching him rock Isabella while humming something that might have been Italian. I'm terrified I'm doing everything wrong. Welcome to parenthood. I stood, moving to join them. We're both terrified. But look at her, Dante. She's perfect. We're doing something right. Isabella grew, month by month, from a tiny bundle into a Rickstain, person with opinions and personality. She smiled at 8 weeks, rolled over at 4 months, laughed for the first time at Nico making ridiculous faces during Sunday dinner. Life settled into a new rhythm. I returned to school part-time once Isabella was 6 months old, determined to finish my degree even if it took longer than planned. Dante continued working toward legitimacy, gradually divesting from operations that required violence, building legitimate revenue streams that could sustain the family. It's working, he told me one evening after putting Isabella to bed. Slowly, incrementally, but it's working. In 5 years, maybe 10, we'll be completely legitimate. Everything legal, everything clean. And then Isabella inherits something she can be proud of. He pulled me against him. Then we've built something that honors the sacrifices our parents made, my mother surviving my father, your grandmother raising you alone. We've broken the cycle, Sofia. Created something better. Isabella turned 1 on a crisp October afternoon that felt like the universe coming full circle. We held her birthday party at Marcello's. Dante had closed it for the event, much to Robert's resignation, and watched her smash cake into her face with gleeful abandon, while the family laughed and took approximately 3,000 photos. She's going to be spoiled, I observed to Cecilia, watching Dante wipe frosting from Isabella's hair with infinite patience. She's going to be loved, Cecilia corrected. There's a difference. Love gives children security. Dante never had that growing up. His father's violence poisoned everything. But Isabella will know from birth that she's cherished, protected, valued. That's worth more than any amount of material spoiling. That night, after Isabella was asleep and the family had gone home, Dante and I stood on the penthouse terrace watching Chicago sparkle in the darkness. 2 years ago, I was hiding bruises and trying to survive one. Day at a time, I said quietly. Now I'm married to you. We have a daughter. I'm finishing my degree, and I feel safer than I ever thought possible. 2 years ago, I saw a woman being abused and couldn't walk away. Dante's arm came around me. Couldn't ignore what I was seeing because it reminded me too much of my mother. Of every woman I'd failed to protect because I was too young or too powerless or too late. He turned me to face him. Thank you, Sofia. For trusting me when you had no reason to. For choosing my dangerous world over safer alternatives. For building this life with me despite every obstacle. Thank you for seeing me when I thought I was invisible. For protecting me without possessing me. for loving me in ways I didn't know were possible. We kissed, soft and deep, while our daughter slept safely inside and the city moved on below us, indifferent to the small miracle of two broken people building something whole together. 5 years later, I stood in Marcello's with a business degree framed on the wall behind the bar and my name on the deed as co-owner. Dante had insisted, said it was my due after years of working there, after building relationships with customers and staff, after bringing management expertise that transformed the operation from profitable to thriving. Isabella was in kindergarten now, confident and bossy and completely wrapped around her father's finger. We'd added a son 2 years ago, Alessandro, who'd inherited my lighter coloring and Dante's intensity, and Cecilia was already making pointed comments about a third grandchild. "I'm done after 2, I'd told her firmly. My body has earned a break. The family businesses were 90% legitimate now. Dante still had a few operations he was gradually divesting from gambling, primarily, and some gray area import arrangements, but the violence had mostly stopped. New families occasionally tested boundaries, but Dante's reputation was enough that serious threats were rare. "You've built something remarkable," Detective Morrison told me one afternoon. He still came by occasionally, ostensibly for the veal piccata but really to keep tabs on Dante's activities. Most mob families double down on crime. The Carusos are actually going legitimate. That's rare. Dante wants our children to inherit something they can be proud of. And you? What do you want? I thought about that question. About the terrified waitress I'd been. About the bruises Marcus had left. About the moment Dante had stepped between me and danger without being asked. "I want what I have," I said finally. "A family that loves me. A business I helped build. Children who will grow up safe and valued. A husband who treats me like an equal instead of a possession." Morrison nodded slowly. "Then I'd say you've succeeded." That evening, after the restaurant closed and the staff had gone home, I found Dante in his office reviewing invoices with the focused attention he brought to everything. "Come home," I said from the doorway. "Alessandro has been asking for you all evening, and Isabella wants to show you the drawing she made at school." He looked up, and his expression softened the way it always did when he saw me. "Give me 5 minutes to finish this." I moved behind his desk, wrapping my arms around his shoulders. "You know what I realized today?" "What's that?" "That we actually made it. Built something real from impossible circumstances. Survived when everything said we shouldn't." Dante turned in his chair, pulling me onto his lap. "We did more than survive, Sofia. We flourished, created a life that honors everyone who came before us while building something new. Your mother would be proud. She is proud. Tells me every Sunday how grateful she is that I found you." He kissed me softly. "How grateful I am that you chose me. Best decision I ever made." We sat there in the quiet office, two people who'd been broken by violence and chosen to heal together. While our children waited at home and the city breathed around us, the future stretched ahead, uncertain but hopeful, built on a foundation of hard-won trust and love that had survived tests most people never faced. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better real, complicated, earned through conscious choices and difficult compromises and the daily work of choosing each other again and again. And that was worth everything. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.